I was recently listening to a conversation involving two guys that had worked in the service industry, specifically the restaurant industry in the United States, and they had a point of contention. One of them was talking about how important it is to put on a good face, be friendly, and make the people that they're serving feel good about themselves, all in an effort to maximize profit. The other guy said it was just a job for him, and he doesn't think that sort of thing is necessary. And I listened for a while. Eventually I chimed in, and it got me thinking about certain issues that are fairly widespread throughout Western civilization, perhaps even the world, but are best exemplified in the context of the United States. So if you've ever spent time in the US, many of you happen to be Americans, so you'll be familiar with this, there is the tacit, and indeed beyond tacit, explicit expectation that whatever you do, you better show up to work smiling. You better put on that friendly face. You better press the button and make sure that you're projecting sunshine and rainbows to the rest of the world. The logic behind this is one born of profit ultimately, with the idea being that if you are friendly to people, if you smile at people, they're going to be more inclined to spend their money with respect to the service that you're participating in. And that even might be true in a lot of sectors. For example, obviously the restaurant industry, because the US is working off of this very strange tip-based economy there. That's a whole other discussion. And I don't even know if I want to talk about that fully. Then you have things like sales, and it probably is relevant there. But if it were only about this, then I'd say, well, fair enough, it's an economic strategy. The problem with this is that it goes well beyond just service industries like sales or restaurants or whatever. It really is at the core of the American culture, and really at the core of all human interaction. So if you're working in an office, the same expectation is on you for the most part. You have to smile, you have to be friendly, you have to chat, you have to make sure that, again, you're projecting sunshine and rainbows. And then, of course, you have to ask the question, why are people doing this in the first place? Well, this isn't openly talked about, but I think there's something quite dark lurking at the core of all of this. You see, if everyone across your society is terrified of being honest and sincere about what they actually feel in any given moment, and when the expectation is to show the opposite of what you feel, which in this context is projecting joy, happiness, contentment when you feel none of that, then it speaks to a fundamental truth about the underlying causes here of what's going on. You see, American society in particular, though it's not exclusive to American society, but it tends to be exemplified, is a society shot through by illusion and delusion, and everyone is forced to play the game. You see, all these people running around with this expectation, be it the service industry, which you could argue has salient economic reasons for being this way, to any other walk of life in the context of American culture, people ultimately are terrified of being quote-unquote infected. What are they afraid of being infected with? They're afraid of being infected with whatever you're carrying, which might be depression, sadness, discontent, a general psychological malaise, because everyone's terrified that if they just crack the smile incorrectly, if there are cracks that emerge in the mask that they're wearing and projecting out to the rest of the world, that they will be infected with your own illness, your illness of depression, sadness, melancholy, whatever it is. So everyone is running around playing this game, pretending to each other, all the while knowing deep down that everything is fine, when in reality, in so many cases, maybe even the majority of cases, nothing is fine. And that's how things are run, and that's how things are done. You pretend, you offer a pretense to the world, and people accept it because they're doing the exact same thing, because no one is willing to confront the underlying reality of what's going on here. That people are not doing well, that they are melancholic, that they're depressed, that they're suffering on multiple fronts. Now you might think that, well, yeah, this certainly applies to strangers and people you don't know, and even work colleagues that you don't know particularly well. And I can tell you from personal experience that it goes well beyond this. I can give you two examples of this. So years ago, as many of you know, I worked in South Korea. I was in the hustle phase. I was working incredible hours, far more than I had ever done before or since. And it was very stressful. There was an issue involving a female, which was quite complicated, and I was working for a boss who was basically a white-collar criminal. On top of that, a real a-hole who was harassing me and many others of my colleagues. In short, it was a very stressful time. And as a consequence, my insomnia had basically peaked out. I mean, I have had, as you know, chronic insomnia for decades, but in many ways it had become the worst it had ever been at that juncture in time. And I had this friend there, we'll call him Bob, for the sake of the story, who I had become relatively close to. We hung out, we used to live together, we go take trips together throughout Korea, this sort of thing. And every now and then he'd accompany me to the doctor for me to get my prescription medication in a different city. And one day, he had showed up at the gym before me, and I said hello to him, and he just flat out said, Stardust, I don't think we can be friends anymore. And I said, well, are you at least going to offer me an explanation? And he just said, you're just too depressed for me, I don't want to deal with it. And we talked it out, and that was that. And after that, we didn't really talk at all. I just ignored him and didn't say anything, although sometimes occasionally he would say hi. It was a bit difficult since we were both employees of this corrupt boss, and we lived in the same building. Funnily enough, something like 10 years later, he reached out to me via email asking how I was doing and what I had been up to. Of course, I did not dignify that email with an answer for obvious reasons. And this was not some stranger I knew. Granted, it wasn't the deepest, but it was a fairly close friendship all in all. And he just woke up one day and said, no, I don't want to deal with this. And why? Well, he didn't exactly say that he didn't want to be infected by me, but you could read it on his face. You want to know something that's even more hardcore, though? I remember when I was struggling in my 20s, going through some serious BS, and I was talking to my parents, and I was telling them what was going on, and my mother flat out said to me, don't call us again unless you have good news to tell us. Now, it wasn't as if I was ever particularly close to my parents, definitely not, but I thought I could share at least, talk about my travails and tribulations and my troubles, and after she told me that, I realized that I definitely couldn't talk to my parents about anything I was struggling with, my depression, just my life in general. And they say nothing is more sacred than family, blood is thicker than water and all that BS, but it's just not true. It really isn't. But the point I'm trying to make here is that this is not just an issue of working in restaurants or selling electronics in an electronics store or clothing at a Gap or whatever it is, or even working in an office with other people. This cuts deeply. This cuts to the core. People don't want to know how you're doing. They generally don't care, even when you're their friends. You have no idea how many times I have heard from people I'm familiar with, strangers, acquaintances, and even friends, that I'm giving off a bad vibe because I'm not Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky. Even if I explain to them, with respect, say, to chronic insomnia, that it's really impossible when you're chronically tired to be jocular and full of sunshine and rainbows, they don't care. They don't care about the causes, they don't care about the context, whether they're close to you or not, in many cases. There are a few exceptions. I will accept people as they come. Perhaps I'm almost too forgiving, but most people, they don't want that. I'm sure you heard the term fair weather friend. That's most human beings, and that includes family, believe it or not, in many cases. So what's been the workaround, especially in the context of the United States, to deal with this sort of thing? You don't talk to your friends about these problems because they don't really want to hear about it usually. You certainly don't talk to your colleagues at work. And you're not going to tell the guy you're serving at the restaurant about these problems. And in many cases, you're not going to even tell your family about these problems. What is the solution here? Well, the almighty therapy, right? Just see a therapist, bruh. Problem solved, bruh. Talk to the therapist. He'll fix your depression. And in this context, it's pretty obvious what the therapy is supposed to do. You're avoiding externalizing these issues, these problems that nobody wants to hear about, even people that are close to you, and you go to a complete stranger who's basically a mercenary. You're paying somebody to, quote-unquote, care about you. Now, this might be a hot take, but at the end of the day, I don't think people can be paid to care about you. I don't think through mercantile activity you can actually have somebody be concerned about your well-being. I don't think it works that way. And whilst a person like that might offer you tips and might even have some good advice here and there, despite the fact that the worst vice is advice, they're not really incentivized to help you. Because although money can incentivize a lot, it cannot incentivize true concern. So the solution being proposed to all of this is to pay somebody to pretend that they care about you. You ever listen to Dr. K? That's the type of guy he is. He pretends to care about people, when in reality he's probably just profiting off of their misery. And the other thing about the mass therapizing of the United States, and to be perfectly honest, most parts of the Western world, did you know that Argentina is the most therapized country in the entire world? It's not the US, it's not the UK, it's not Germany, it's not Canada, it's freaking Argentina. More people see more therapists there than anywhere else in the world. Where does this come from in addition to the things I've been talking about? It comes from this notion that therapists can either fix your problems, or probably more reasonably it would be claimed, can help you fix your problems. But that doesn't tell you what's going on with depression to begin with. Yes, there are many cases where an individual's genes in conjunction with the environment and biochemistry just affect certain changes, and despite having nominally great lives, these people feel deeply depressed. I know such individuals. I know a guy who's tall, attractive, and screws at least 3 to 5 different women every week. He's young, he has pretty good money, he has a lot going for him, and yet he is crushingly depressed. These things do happen, but they're not the most common instance of depression. The most common instance of depression and melancholy is not having the things that you need as a human being to keep you going and keep you somewhat content in life. Be it close friendships, relationships, or even money. Believe it or not, yes, lack of material wealth can depress you, can make you sad, can make you miserable, because you're not able to meet your basic needs. Now here we'll enter the choir talking about the poor people in third world countries who are poor as dirt but are not depressed and joyful and happy. Yeah, because it happens in an environment and context, like everything. In a so-called first world country like the US, which to be perfectly honest is only partly first world and to some degree third world, everyone is playing the game of keeping up with the Joneses. They're all trying to one-up each other. And so your lack of material wealth in that context, your relative poverty, will make you unhappy, will make you less content than the others. It's all about context. Whereas if you're living in some village in the middle of nowhere in Africa, there's no point of comparison. Comparison is the thief of joy, with it all the while being the only way we can arrive at conclusions about our own status and abilities in the world. So at the root of most depression is privation, lacking certain things. But people don't care about that. They just want you to see a therapist. Again, because it offloads the issue into obscurity. You're not projecting your issues to the public. You're not talking about it. You are supposed to smile through the pain. You're supposed to keep on chugging along till you drop dead. And all the promises you heard and all the BS you heard throughout your whole life, none of that was fulfilled. But you were a good little boy. You did what you were told. You did what you were supposed to do. And you know what you get for that? Nothing. I think people should stop BSing, stop faking their way through things and pretending. Because once that happens, at least we'll have some sense of what's really going on the ground. And we'll also get a sense of just how bad it is. And I suspect it is quite bad out there. Quite bad indeed. So I say, screw all the smile through the pain BS. It's nonsense. It's not helping anyone. Least of all you as an individual. Anyway, thank you for tuning in as always. Many special thanks to my patrons on Patreon and my donors on PayPal. You guys are the lifeblood of the channel. Without you, the channel couldn't exist. The strike I received a while back has been pretty devastating to the channel, so you guys are absolutely essential. Love you guys. As for everybody else, if you can leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. Maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. Be much appreciated. If I'm still alive, I'll check you out next time. Until then, may the gods watch over you. Take care for now, and be well. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.